Your throat feels like it's coated in glue right now. You swallow, and it's still there. You cough, and it comes right back. Maybe you've tried water. Maybe you've tried tea. Maybe you've tried clearing your throat 40 times an hour until your coworkers started giving you looks. And nothing works. Here's the uncomfortable truth doctors rarely say out loud. Most of what you're doing to get rid of that mucus is actually making it worse. Not slightly worse, significantly worse. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why, plus the one method that pulmonologists actually use in clinical settings that almost nobody talks about online. Let's start with why this happens in the first place, because understanding the mechanism changes everything about how you treat it. Your throat and airways are lined with a thin layer of mucus at all times. This isn't a malfunction. It's a defense system. It traps dust, viruses, bacteria, allergens, anything that shouldn't be in your lungs. Tiny hair-like structures called cilia constantly sweep that mucus upward and out, like a conveyor belt you never notice until something goes wrong. When you catch a virus, develop allergies, get exposed to smoke, or even just breathe dry air for too long, your body ramps up mucus production to trap and flush out the irritant faster. The problem is, in trying to protect you, your body sometimes produces so much mucus, or mucus that's so thick, the conveyor belt gets jammed. That's the sensation you're feeling right now. Not infection necessarily, not always illness, just a traffic jam. Now, here's where most people go wrong, and I mean almost everyone. The instinct when you feel phlegm in your throat is to cough it out aggressively or clear your throat hard over and over. It feels productive. It feels like you're doing something. But mechanically, forceful throat clearing does something you don't expect. It irritates the delicate tissue in your larynx, causing microinflammation. That inflammation triggers even more mucus production as a protective response. So you clear your throat, feel a few seconds of relief, and then the sensation comes right back, often worse than before. You're stuck in a loop you built yourself. Doctors call this a vicious cycle of throat clearing, and it's one of the most common reasons chronic phlegm sensations never resolve, even in people who don't have any underlying illness at all. So if aggressive clearing isn't the answer, what actually is? Stick with me because we're going to walk through this step by step, and I promise the final piece of this puzzle is something almost nobody does correctly, even though it's sitting right in front of them. The first thing you need to understand is hydration, but not the way you think. Sipping a little water here and there does almost nothing for mucus consistency. What actually thins mucus is consistent, steady internal hydration throughout the entire day, paired with humidified air. Thick, sticky phlegm is often simply dehydrated mucus. Think of it like paint. Add water, it flows. Let it dry out, it becomes an unworkable clump stuck to the surface. Your throat works the same way. If the air around you is dry, especially from air conditioning or heating systems, that mucus dries out and thickens, making it feel like it's glued in place. This is why symptoms are almost always worse the moment you wake up. Overnight, you're breathing dry air for 6 to 8 hours straight with minimal swallowing to move things along. Now consider this. A lot of people reach for cough drops or throat lozenges the second they feel that tickle. And on the surface, that seems logical. But here's what's actually happening. Many over-the-counter lozenges contain menthol. And while menthol creates a cooling sensation that feels soothing, it can also dry out the mucous membranes with repeated use. Overuse actually works against you. The relief is temporary, but the drying effect can prolong the very problem you're trying to solve. This doesn't mean lozenges are the enemy. It means the way most people use them, popping 5 or 6 a day for hours on end, is quietly backfiring. Here's where it gets more interesting, because there's a distinction almost nobody makes, and it fundamentally changes how you should be treating your symptoms. Not all throat mucus is the same. Postnasal drip, where mucus from your sinuses drains down the back of your throat, feels completely different from mucus that originates lower in your airway, closer to your lungs, and gets pushed upward. Postnasal drip tends to feel like a constant trickle, worse when lying down, often paired with a runny or stuffy nose. Lower airway mucus tends to feel heavier, more centered in the chest, and is often accompanied by a deeper, more productive cough. Treating one like the other is why so many people feel stuck. If you're using nasal treatments for a lung-based issue or throat remedies for a sinus-based issue, you're essentially treating the wrong location entirely. This is also where trigger identification becomes critical, and it's something almost nobody actually investigates. Common triggers include allergens like dust, pollen, and pet dander, irritants like smoke, strong perfumes, or pollution, acid reflux, which is far more common than people realize and often shows up as throat symptoms with zero heartburn at all, postnasal drip from sinus inflammation, and simple dry indoor air, especially in climate controlled environments. If you don't know which of these is driving your symptoms, you're essentially guessing at solutions. And that's exactly why so many people cycle through cough drops, sprays, and home remedies without ever actually fixing the root cause. Let's talk about acid reflux for a moment because this one surprises almost everyone. Silent reflux, where stomach acid creeps up into the throat without the classic burning sensation in your chest, is one of the most underdiagnosed causes of that persistent phlegm feeling. The acid irritates the throat lining, and your body responds the same way it does to any irritant by producing more mucus to protect the tissue. People spend months trying cough syrups and lozenges, completely unaware that the real trigger is happening hours earlier, often after a late dinner or lying down too soon after eating. If your symptoms are worse in the morning, worse after eating certain foods, or come with a mild sour taste, this might be exactly what's happening to you, and it requires a completely different approach than a typical cold. Now, breathing technique matters more than almost anyone realizes, and this is where we start moving toward that major reveal I mentioned earlier. Shallow chest breathing, which most people default to when they're anxious, congested, or uncomfortable, doesn't generate enough airflow to help move mucus naturally. Deep diaphragmatic breathing, on the other hand, creates a kind of internal air pressure shift that gently helps loosen and mobilize mucus without the harsh mechanical irritation of forceful coughing. This is actually a technique used in respiratory therapy, and it's shockingly underused by everyday people dealing with everyday phlegm. But that's only half the story. Because breathing alone won't solve everything if you're still doing the thing that undoes all your progress. And that brings us to the biggest mistake, the one almost nobody catches themselves doing. Throat clearing habits become subconscious. You do it without thinking, dozens of times a day, every time you feel that slightest sensation. And every single time, you're triggering a fresh wave of irritation and mucus production. Breaking this habit consciously, replacing the urge to clear your throat with a gentle, silent swallow instead, is one of the single most effective things you can do. It sounds almost too simple to matter, but speech therapists who specialize in voice and throat issues use exactly this technique with patients who have chronic throat clearing habits, and the results speak for themselves within just a couple of weeks. Now, here's the reveal, the piece almost nobody puts together, because it combines everything we just covered into one actionable method. The most effective approach used by ENT specialists and pulmonologists for stubborn mucus isn't a single remedy, it's a specific sequence. Step 1, controlled steam inhalation for several minutes, which humidifies and loosens mucus without the drying effect of menthol products. Step 2, immediately following that with diaphragmatic breathing, slow, deep breaths that create the airflow needed to naturally mobilize loosened mucus upward. Step 3, a single gentle huff cough. Not a harsh, aggressive cough, but a soft, controlled exhale through an open mouth, almost like fogging up a mirror. This technique, sometimes called huff coughing, is specifically designed to move mucus without the throat trauma of repeated forceful coughing or clearing. And step 4, a deliberate silent swallow, instead of the reflexive throat clear that got you into this mess in the first place. This sequence, steam, deep breath, huff, swallow, done consistently, especially first thing in the morning and before bed, addresses the actual mechanics of how mucus moves through your airway instead of fighting against your body's natural defense system. It respects the biology instead of overriding it with force. And this is exactly why it tends to outperform cough drops, sprays, and aggressive throat clearing, because it's not masking the sensation. It's working with the system your body already built to protect you. Of course, there's a line here that matters, and it's important I say this clearly. If your phlegm is accompanied by fever, difficulty breathing, chest pain, blood, or symptoms lasting more than a couple of weeks without improvement, that's not a home remedy situation anymore. That's a conversation with a doctor, full stop. Everything in this video is about the everyday, nagging, frustrating phlegm sensation, most people deal with, from allergies, mild irritation, or lingering post-viral symptoms, not a substitute for actual medical evaluation when something more serious is going on. But for the vast majority of people watching this right now, stuck in that loop of clearing your throat every few minutes, feeling like nothing helps, the fix isn't more products. It's not stronger cough drops. It's not forcing it out harder. It's working with your airway instead of against it. Steam, breathe, huff, swallow. That's the sequence. That's what actually moves stubborn mucus without the cycle of irritation you've been stuck in. If this finally explained why nothing you've tried has worked, do yourself a favor and hit subscribe, because there's a lot more of this kind of practical doctor level breakdown coming. The stuff that actually gets to the root of the problem instead of just masking the symptom. Drop a comment and let me know if you're dealing with the morning version of this or the all day version, because the triggers behind each one are actually a little different. And that might be exactly what we break down next.